Hello guys, welcome back. Been wanting to make this video for a while and here I am. So I've been making a lot of videos describing how the body is an antenna and the brain is an antenna, and with or theory we can see how the brain is actually picking up consciousness from the space-time geometry of the universe, and therefore everything is endowed with consciousness. It is not just simply our brains which have consciousness. And now I want to make a video of like what are the implications of this, and I want to throw in some other theories of mine that bring to light what these religious scriptures and teachings, everything from the Vedic text to Buddhist text to the biblical text, are trying to describe. And I propose that they're describing scientific phenomena which they didn't have the language for in those times. They didn't have the right terminology, or the terminology that we have. They didn't have, simulated graphs that they could use on a computer to demonstrate to the masses, and therefore they use parables and metaphors. And I contend that if anybody would try to explain to somebody in the 1800s or 1700s what a computer was, you would probably end up using metaphors as well. Anyhow, it's a pretty fairly agreeable point, I find. So moving on, this video I want to throw in some things about the pineal gland's role and how this whole spiritual vision, and that verse in the Bible which says that let thine eye be single and thy whole body will be filled with light. The eye is the light of the body. So I already made a little one where I'd say that when they're talking about your eye being single, I believe they're talking about coherence, the same coherence that I keep talking about, which the Heart Math Institute has done so much scientific research and empirical evidence for, that when you have coherence between the right and the left side of the brain, and your brain waves with your breath, with your heart, and your gut, you are generating an amplified resonance throughout your body, which happens at around 7.8 hertz. This 7.8 hertz frequency happens to also be the frequency of the planet Earth. Call it, what you will. I don't believe in coincidences, and I think that I have a scientific basis for not believing in coincidences. So, the Earth also has the Schumann resonance, which is a vibration that the Earth is generating always, a field. And most people have seen this field, which goes like this around the Earth. It's a very common thing. The North Pole of the Earth, the South Pole of the Earth, and then this electromagnetic field which goes through it. Well, that's called a torus field. And that same torus field occurs in the heart. Your heart is generating that same field. The same field is everywhere in nature. If you were to slice an apple, cut it in half, you'll see that at its core, it goes like this, and then it comes right back. The circle. There's these two circles kind of like that come back and meet in the core. So there's a lot of esoteric teachings that are referring to that oneness. So that I am being single is where everything is here in the present moment, focused in the now, which I believe is the kingdom of heaven, or part of it, or at least the gateway to access the kingdom of heaven, and nirvana, and samadhi, and so many other states of bliss that we've learned about from these spiritual teachers. So, excuse me a second. What I wanted to say then is that these torus fields, which I've already explained, are in nested hierarchies, and with Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic field theory, that there are actual fields that guide the behavior of all things, we can start to conceive of a massive field, because there's a little field of my heart which actually has a bunch of little fields, other fields in fractal fields. So it's a field within a field within a field, and then there's a field for the whole body, and then that field locks into the resonance of the planet Earth through the Schumann resonance, which I just described. When we have coherence, we achieve 7.8 hertz within ourselves, and therefore tap into or tune into the 7.8 hertz of the Schumann resonance, which is the Earth's electromagnetic field. Once we do that, then we're locked into the solar system's electromagnetic field. And the solar system is tapped into the galaxy's electromagnetic field. And the Milky Way galaxy is orbiting around other, it has its own cycle. So it's locked into the entire universe. And in this way, we can conceive of this amazing massive field, galactic and beyond galactic field of resonance, which is via this massive field is organizing the behavior of all the fields that are within it. Just like the fields of the heart and the body are guiding and organizing the behavior of the smaller fields, because every cell in your body has a little tiny field around it as well. And it's picking up cues from its environment, which is where Bruce Lipton's work comes in. If you check out Bruce Lipton's work, and there's other cellular biologists who have demonstrated the same thing, we get to understand that the chemical responses, that the chemical signaling that we already understand about how cells communicate and how our brain communicates to our cells, those are actually secondary to the energetic environment, to the field. A field is producing an electric charge, and the way that you perceive things, with your brain, is perceiving and interpreting the information, the raw quantum data that's coming at it. Again, this is now tying in with OR theory. So your brain is collapsing the wave. You're perceiving and interpreting what's going on in your environment, and that is determining the quality of hormones that are, and the chemical chain reaction that your brain is producing is in response to the environment. Once your brain is producing that chemical chain of chemical reactions and responses, it floods your blood with those neurochemicals, those endorphins, or those other hormones, and then these hormones are informing the cell, and the cell is actually literally changes its shape based on the electrical charges and the electromagnetic resonance that is going on around it. So again, I'm driving the point home that all the physical things that we understand about the mechanical vision of the universe, or the mechanical worldview of how biology works, it's there. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it happens secondary. It's triggered by energy, consciousness, information. If you don't like the word spirit and you don't like the word consciousness, just think of it as information. It's already been demonstrated that there is no such thing as a vacuum in space that is devoid of information. Information is everywhere. So this leads us to understanding that this mother force can be conceived as one aspect of God. This mother field, which is organizing all the other fields within it, is very well, I'm proposing that it could be one aspect of God. There's another aspect of God which is much more personal, creative, artistic, loving, and feeling and intuitive. And you can only arrive at knowing that aspect of God through your intuition, through love. And this is why so many artists and so many prophets of the time talk about devotion. Devotion is a way of knowing. And I'll get into that in another video. But in this video, finally, I'm going to arrive at the new element, which is the pineal gland. I know everybody wants to hear about the pineal gland. So where does the pineal gland roll in all this? So I'm proposing, and based on my experience doing my year-long fast, if you haven't heard of my year-long fast, please check out my videos on my year-long fast, because this is how I was able to arrive at a lot of this information by direct experience. Science is the study of phenomena. Spirituality is the direct experience of that same phenomena that science is talking about. It's not two different things. And when we allow ourselves to connect both sides of our brain, one side of our brain is doing science, observing the phenomena, and the other side of our brain is able to directly access and experience of it. That's the right side of the brain. When we combine these two, then we have oneness and we have harmony, and we grant ourselves access to a greater reality of harmony and balance, and being in tune with the universe, being one with the flow of life. So when this harmonic resonance happens within the system, which I've described several times, it amplifies the resonance. It increases the current, the electromagnetic current that's going on in your brain is increased. And that's how you can stimulate the DMT in your pineal gland. So when I was fasting, many people who know about DMT and who know about endogenous DMT, because obviously you can just smoke DMT, but if you want to produce it in your own pineal gland in order to unlock, spiritual psychic powers or however you want to talk about it, then you don't just smoke it. That way you are depleting it. If you want to really cultivate your ability to access the higher dimensions of information, which are described in the spiritual text and now we know are actually real, scientifically demonstrated in quantum physics, there's a couple of ways that it happens. It happens in very deep sleep, and it happens in near-death experiences. In near-death experiences, people feel like they're going through a tunnel and they access, higher realms where they see angels or past loved ones who have passed away, because it creates it creates a doorway. I don't understand exactly how it does so, but the DMT creates a doorway to the astral realms, the higher realms, the non-physical realm. It allows us to perceive directly. Okay, so how do I stimulate the pineal gland to do that without smoking DMT? Well, when I was fasting, I did a year-long fast. I was experiencing it almost all the time because I was very close to death. I was basically having a controlled and sustained near-death experience, and I was just walking around in that state. Not that I did a lot of walking, because I was very, my energy was very low, and I was very sensitive to all kinds of things that most people don't perceive and don't even believe are real. So I didn't find myself going out a lot, but I did have incredible rapturous experiences that I have read about in the Bible and in the Vedic texts and in the Buddhist texts, and even in Rumi's poetry and Hafiz's poetry. So anyhow, what I'm saying is that the near-death experience is the one way that most people can stimulate this pineal gland to secrete hormones like DMT and other hormones, melanin and serotonin combined. All these combined, and there's 5-MDMO. I don't remember the exact name of that. But the conclusion here is that when you come into resonance, people do this in meditation, and they have something called a Kundalini awakening. A lot of people experience a Kundalini awakening like almost like a panic attack, like a fear of death, what they call the ego death. That is happening via this harmonic resonance. And the work of Ishkatov Bentov, who also has YouTube videos, describes how the resonating, oscillating systems of the body can come into harmony and frequency, and it amplifies the current in your brain. The amount of electromagnetic current in your brain is amplified so much that it actually stimulates the release of DMT in your pineal gland directly. And that's it. That's the big conclusion of this video. That through this harmonic resonance, you want to purify, and fasting is also has a big role, but you don't have to fast to do this. As long as you don't have a calcified pineal gland, because you have it, when you ingest a lot of the kind of food that is promoted in, I have no value judgment when I say this, but when it's promoted by the conventional diet and the mainstream media, there's a lot of foods that block and calcify the pineal gland. So that's part of the role of fasting. And I can guide people through that. That's not what this video is about. But just so you know that you are able to stimulate the pineal gland with electromagnetic energy or currents that happen that are always being produced. Your brain is always generating a torus field. And then that creates the torus field antenna, and then all these mystical visions that people have and have described that get completely unvalidated by science is because of this biological mechanism, which is very, very real and is very, very empirically demonstrated by science. I hope this is helpful. I love any questions or comments or ideas. Post them. Please share this video. Much love to you all. Be well. Satnam.